Good afternoon from the Water Utilization Learning Center. My name is Brian Olson. I'm out here standing in front of our corn that's tasseling and our high input corn. We've got our short statured corn in the front here and the tall corn in the back. But I'm actually here to talk about fungicide applications. And so right now is a great time to put those fungicide applications out on the corn that's at that VTR1 stage. We've got two products, Delaro and Delaro Complete from Bayer Crop Science, that do a good job on controlling things like northern corn leaf blight, gray leaf spot, southern rust. But now's the time when farmers have to make that decision. And so I'm also out here with Mark Ryman.
Yep.
And so Mark, what are we currently seeing out there in the field?
Well, we're not seeing a lot in terms of disease pressure. It just seems like with our hot, dry conditions, we're not picking up a lot of diseases. I've heard in other parts of the state as we move east, starting to pick up some northern corn leaf blight, some gray leaf spot moving in, but so far not a lot of activity. I think sometimes that gets us into the feeling that, well, you know, maybe you won't see anything for the year, but typically that's certainly not the case. And the other thing we are starting to pick up, not yet in Nebraska, but we saw it move in last year, was tar spot. In Iowa and other states of the east are starting to pick tar spot up. Usually tar spot's favored by, you know, kind of cool, wet conditions, which we haven't had this year, but they're still picking up in those states.
So when we look at those two products, Delaro and Delaro Complete, Delaro was the standard out there for a number of years from Bayer Crop Science, and it's got two fungicides in it. What are those fungicides, Mark?
So you got prothioconazole, a very good triazole fungicide, and then trifloxystrobin, your strobilurin. So that kind of 1-2 punch on diseases there. And then with the addition of Delaro Complete to the lineup, you add fluopyram to that, which is a SDHI, which adds that third mode of action, so you can pick up diseases that, one that comes to mind even in soybeans is frog eye leaf spot that's resistant to the strobilurins. You can pick that up with that fungicide.
And like you're pointing out, yeah, so Delaro Complete can also be put out on the soybeans as needed. But when we're looking at our corn, again, we're not seeing a whole lot going on out there with diseases. Things could change. But last year we had a similar situation from 2021. What did we see with some of the research in 2021?
So yeah, it was a setup again where we weren't seeing a lot of disease. We went through a very dry period in there, really from kind of R1 onward in the corn crop. And with that R1 application of Delaro Complete, we were seeing 7 bushels per acre advantage over our untreated. And then we did have a situation where it's too late now. We had a V6 plus the R1 application. We actually saw another 9 bushels on top of our R1 application out there. So pretty nice yield responses, even though we weren't picking up that disease pressure. So some of the other things we talk about in terms of the fungicide is, you know, obviously strong disease protection, but we also see improved plant health and then better stalks, better, you know, just kind of that better plant health overall at the end of the season for grain fill, you know, improves photosynthesis and a lot of different plant functions.
And so if farmers are considering to go out and get a fungicide application on, what would be some common things they need to make sure they do not do? Is there things like around NIS that would be a big no-no?
Well, at the R1, we're really past that stage. Prior, you know, between V8 and R1, or kind of VT or full tassel extension, we would not recommend a non-ionic surfactant. Prior to that or after, you know, that can be added as an adjuvant into your tank mix.
Yep, that's a good point. Yeah, and all has to do with getting those silks pollinated. And so you covered that last week, but looks like we've got some pretty good pollen shed going on out there right now. A little bit warmer conditions, but we do have some opportunities for some really good yield potential on some fields. We've had some other fields that have gotten knocked back by hail and maybe don't quite have the water, but for those fields that do have the water, the sun is out, and we've got some really good yield potential on some of these fields. Any final thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, it really is like you mentioned on our irrigated field where we've got the water and we're seeing pollination. It looks like we've got a really good potential for a nice crop. So certainly anything we can do to help that along and protect some of that yield is going to be an advantage for us.
Yep, and that's a good way to summarize it there. So with that, we'll talk to you about other agronomic topics from the Learning Center in the coming weeks. Thank you.